Good day, everyone. I'm glad to have you with me for another Live with Kevin on a Monday, which you normally would find us here if you've been with us before. So if you have been with us before, you know what I'm about to say. But if you haven't, I hope that you will just say hello in the whatever social platform you're on in the comments. Just say hello. Tell us where you're from. We'd love to know that. And we want to do this in a way that creates the most value for you because you're the first audience before we eventually have a podcast audience. But since we're doing this for you live, if you have a question, just imagine it like this. If you were joining me or a couple of people as a mentor, as a person with maybe some insights that you wanted to get, maybe a coach, then you would ask them questions, right? You'd share your questions, your comments, and your ideas. And I hope that you will do that here, because if you do that, this will be more valuable for you, and hopefully it'll make a better podcast episode as well. So with that out of the way, what I'm going to do now is a countdown where we will trim this for the actual podcast. So Marissa, this is for you in 3, 2, 1. Would you like a mentor whose journey you could learn from? And even if you have one or more already, how about another? This is another episode in the special series of episodes we call My Remarkable Journey here on the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Today, like in the others, I will talk with a senior leader, in this case, a CEO, to learn about their path, their lessons, and their journey towards becoming the leader they are today. So welcome to this very special episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. If you are listening to this podcast, you could have been with us live, and so you could be on future live episodes with us on your favorite social channel. You can learn more about that, get connected so that you know when they take place by going to our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn. Today's episode is brought to you by our Remarkable Master Classes. If you are looking for a powerful, practical way to learn valuable skills on your time and on your device, consider Remarkable Master Classes. Currently, there are 13 designed and delivered by me on a wide range of personal and professional development topics. Want to overcome resistance? Want to be more influential? Those are just 2 examples of these master classes. Buy for yourself or talk to us about licensing any or all of these for your team or organization. You can learn more by going to remarkablemasterclass.com. That probably didn't surprise you. remarkablemasterclass.com. And Keith is right here. I did not have him leave. I told him I was going to have him leave. I didn't do it. So he's right here. Let me introduce him and we will dive in. Keith Smith is on a mission to help leaders, entrepreneurs, and investors live more empowered lives, cultivate innovation, overcome fear, and become more effective leaders. He strives to make a difference by sharing his energy, experience, and passion, imparting wisdom and thought leadership, and being in the present during times of need. Keith has over 25 years of experience as an executive leader, mentor, and motivator. He is the president and CEO of Vonco Products in Trevor, Wisconsin. He is my guest today, and I'm so glad that you're here, Keith. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
I have already failed because I told you I would send you off so you wouldn't have to sit there while I did all that part, and then I promptly didn't do it. As I told you, I'm not in my normal location, so I messed that up. But I'm glad that all of you are with us today, and I'm excited to share some of Keith's journey with you. And so let's just start here, Keith. You've been a leader for 25 years. What was your first leadership role? Like, how did you get started on this path in that regard? What was the first job you had as a leader?
Yeah, my first impactful leadership role, and maybe more of a traditional title, was a lead man at 22 years old. I was simply working at a printing company and trying to earn money for college along the way, working night shift, running printing presses for packaging, and going to college during the day. And this opportunity came up that, like, man, I would really love to see if I could. And I felt like I've had this opportunity to be a leader, and the title was actually lead man. And so it's kind of a department first step to supervision. And I didn't get it, actually. I had some pretty stiff competition initially. And I remember even at 22, I would never give this advice, but you feel like I'm never going to make it. It's
Well, we have a very different view of the world when we're 22 than when we're
you better
older,
believe it.
right?
You better believe it. And I was when this came up, I was very serious about the opportunity, but I don't know that I was extremely intentional about moving myself into leadership roles. And what it actually transpired was the gentleman that was promoted turned it down, and I was the second pick, and I had
So
no
you
problem with
did get it. You just
I had no
didn't get
problem
it
with it. It took a
initially.
little while to get there, and that moment was pretty pivotal for me to say, as down as I was when I didn't get it, it was extremely the opposite of a high. Like, this is something that I really get excited about. It inspires me. It's I want to do this. I believe there's opportunity to create a lot of value through leadership, and I really committed myself at that point in time to create a pathway and be extremely intentional and deliberate for the rest of my career towards improving my leadership.
What was a lesson that you say you took from that first role once you got it as the second choice? Like what's one of the early lessons you got from that role?
Yeah, people don't follow titles; people follow true leadership, and I learned that a lot the hard way, um, being relatively inexperienced in these positions, really no training. It was all kind of innate. Again, I've been in lots of school leadership, sports leadership roles, and so some of that stuff can be somewhat natural. But I really do believe leaders can be made over time, and that's what I had to learn a bit of the hard way. Is I walk into this role as I was just working alongside all my colleagues, and step into that first role and walk around and say, yeah, you need to respect me. I've got this title, and that's just not how it works. And I think sometimes you underestimate that. Some folks can. I certainly did, and had to learn the hard way, and really had to reset and apologize for a lot of mistakes I made in that early position.
Yeah, so I co-wrote a book called From Bud to Boss. We've talked a
Yeah.
lot about that over
Yeah.
the course of time. So you saw someone who just joined us has told us where they're from. So if you're with us, feel free to tell us that. So what's something, Keith, in your journey as a leader that you're most proud of?
Yeah, it's really just a behavioral trait. It's just constant curiosity and learning. It's just I've never stopped, and I love surrounding myself with people like that. That just I get this concept of looking like the smartest one in the room, and it's fine. But I don't necessarily put that as a high priority. I look for someone that's extremely inquisitive, wants to learn, and leans in. I mean, you can never know exactly how somebody else is feeling, or how they, what motivates them, and so you have to be curious to find these things out, and extract this. So it's really a behavioral trait that is what I'm most proud of, that I've maintained as my creed. From that time, I was well before 22, just curious on how things work, curious on how people are motivated, curious about what inspires them, curious about what creates value for my customers.
And so that you may have just answered my next question, but maybe not. So what would you say is your greatest strength as a leader?
Uh, yeah, that's a good one, but I would say really calm in the storm, balanced and grounded, never too high, never too low. And so I think when just advice for other leaders, it's tough to follow a leader that seems to have their emotions move on a whim, and it's one of the things that I've really worked to balance myself, is my energy, so that I can remain balanced in the good times and any of the challenges and struggles business and life inevitably throws your way.
So For those of you who are watching or listening in these special episodes, I always ask my guest if there's one question that they want me to ask or one thing that they want to talk about. And you just hinted at it. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about energy. You're a big energy guy. You think it's valuable. You know it's valuable. And what are some ideas that you've learned? What are some strategies that you use to help us manage our energy? I guess first, why is that so important?
Yeah.
From your
Yeah.
perspective, and then what's your advice in that regard?
Yeah, I one of the sayings maybe that I live by is manage your energy, not your time. And there's so much out there for time management, and energy. Time is fixed, and so you can't really change that. Energy is something that you can control for yourself. You can't control other people's energy, but something that I can control and contribute to. And so when I pour into my own energy, I feel like I overflow into everyone else, my customers, my community, my employees. So I've seen a marked difference when I become intentional and deliberate about managing my own energy, and the outcomes that happen tend to be positive and what I'm looking for. But when they don't, I'm grounded and can kind of deal with the variables that show up.
So what's one of your big pieces of advice about how to do that? Like, I think most of us would agree, like, yeah, energy is important. I mean, I don't know that everyone would say it as eloquently as you just did, or maybe think about it in the way that you're describing. And yet we all would like to be better at it. So what's a piece of advice you have for helping us sort of add to or manage our energy?
Yeah, to me, it's about prioritization, and it's a little bit similar to time, but having a very specific way to prioritize. And I've had plenty of challenges myself. I had a fair amount of wrong priorities. I'd wake up in the morning, and the first thing I would do as a business owner and CEO is get right on my emails and get right on responses and what happened last night, operations that are running. And so, and then I'd come home and I'd check my emails right before I go to bed. And so working basically nonstop. And so what I found is that, I knew what was going on a lot, but I also felt drained. And
you weren't doing anything about it. You just knew it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. And just felt drained all the time. And my relationships felt that. My health felt that. And so there's so many things kind of out of whack. So I would say the first big thing is to prioritize yourself. And so that would be the first thing. And that's what do you enjoy? What are the things that fill your cup, and make sure you find some time for that. And then health, I before I even get into work, I've spent time filling my cup with motivational podcasts and discussions, as well as a really strong workout routine, a little time in the heat or cold, whether it's a cold plunge or a sauna, something that pours into me before I even get the day started. And then the amount of energy I have when I get into the office, instead of checking my emails right away, I work on my most important thing. And that's when I'm most energetic and I'm in flow, let's call it, an energetic flow of doing things that I'm passionate about and I can make a big difference in. And usually when I'm working on something that can make a big difference, hopefully it's something for a customer or something for an employee, right? So that's pouring into others because I've got that energy. So it all starts really, let's call it, with a pretty strict, intentional morning routine.
Perfect. Well, I'm right with you. And not everyone's routine has to be the same, but we've got to find out the one that works for us, the rhythm that works for us. And as you said, those most important things, including ourselves. So I love that. So another thing that you mentioned, I read it in the intro, that struck me that I think is worth us talking about for a second, which is about the value of being present. So a two-part question again. What do you mean when you say being present, and how can we be better at it?
Yeah, great question. it goes into a bit of the curiosity as well. I think being present is important to quiet your mind with distractions. So we live in a society that has lots of distractions. A lot of folks will have their cell phones in their hands, or cell phones, while they're working right next to them. These things. I just heard a ding, for instance. Right? There's lots of distractions that can pull you away from what you're focused on. And I think eliminating those distractions, when you have somebody sitting in your office, or somebody sitting there with an issue, they don't want you to be distracted with something else. They want you to me, one of the most important things in a relationship is that I feel felt, that you're appreciating, you're validating someone's feelings. And that's very difficult to feel felt by the other person if they're distracted with so many things. So being present is
not just difficult, darn near impossible.
Yeah. I would not feel good if, hey, I have an issue here, I've got a customer issue. I want to go talk to somebody, and someone's sitting on the cell phone texting while we're talking about a customer issue. That just, it seems just disrespectful. But I certainly don't feel appreciated. I certainly don't feel validated that someone's listening to what my real issue is.
No, I would agree. So we got a question that came in from one of our listeners, and I think that you've talked about this. I didn't see when it came in exactly, but I'll ask it. See if you want to add anything you've already said. How do you manipulate your energy to get what you want in your career and life? I think you mostly answered it, but maybe there's something else you want to add at this point.
Yeah, great question. I would say I like to use the word cultivate, let's call it. And so it really is, when you say what you want to get in your career or life, that's a certain outcome you want. And I certainly have lots of goals I want to achieve. And so I then become deliberate and intentional about writing out what I want to achieve. And I actually live on a daily chart. It's called the chart of intentional living. Am I actually doing the small steps to get to where I want to go? Now, I think the trick in managing energy, because so many people, myself included, want to give up before you actually get to that outcome. So I think the trick, for me anyway, and it may not be for everybody, but is to detach actually from that outcome. Is that outcome, I want it, but I also, if it doesn't happen exactly the journey of getting there, I've learned a lot. I've learned by the obstacles along that way to get to where and there will be, it may not be the exact outcome I defined, but I have now gained so much more experience and education and learning in that process that good outcomes come out of it, even if it wasn't the exact intended one.
I've already won, regardless of what happens at the end, right? So how would you define, Keith, how would you define your leadership philosophy?
Yeah, I would say it's cultivating infectious energy. So it starts with making sure I'm as rock solid as possible and as energetic as I am. And again, it's not like coming out of my seat type of energy type person, but it's making sure that I'm ready to navigate whatever comes my way, so I can pour into others and lead through infectious energy.
Perfect. I love that word, infectious energy, because first of all, it is infectious. Whatever the energy is, positive, cynical, it's all infectious. But we certainly know where you sit on that spectrum, and based on this conversation. So, one more question.
There. Yeah, we've all been there. We've when someone walks in the room and they just exude it, like they own the room. It's just like they haven't even said anything. And then you have others where that walk into the room and just change the mood down, right? That they're just dragging their feet and not happy or upset. That energy, it is infectious. It changes the view of an entire organization.
And that's true for everybody, but it's especially true for us as leaders, right? The position of leader, because people are paying more attention to us. We have an outsized impact, an outsized chance to be influential. So I really love that thought. The only thing you knew for sure I guess you knew I was going to ask you about energy because we talked about that. But the only other thing that you knew I was going to ask you is this. So what's a book that was especially meaningful to your career and why?
Yeah, it's relatively recent. There's been a lot, but I would say "The Obstacle Is the Way" by Ryan Holiday is one of my favorite. It's built on a lot of stoicism and back to that balanced and grounded in navigating, the inevitable storms and opportunities that come. Don't get too high, don't get too low. It is what it is. Amor fati, love your fate. A lot of principles like that come out of that book, and a lot of examples of great stoic leaders that have led through challenging and some good opportunities as well.
So Keith, before we wrap up, where would you want to point people? Where, if they want to learn more about you, get connected with you, where can people learn more?
Yeah, I'd love to connect and chat. Obviously, talk a lot about energy. So many different life hacks and that we can share. But keithsmith.io, hit my website up and drop a note there, and would love to chat with a few people from your group and your podcast here, Kevin.
So it's keithsmith.io, everyone. Just to make sure you get the IO. I'm guessing somebody else has .com.
Yeah.
So keithsmith.io. So before we finish, everyone, I'm going to ask you the question I ask you at every episode, whether it's a regular episode or one of these special journey episodes. The question is, now what? What action are you going to take as a result of what you just heard? Maybe you're going to go get a copy of The Obstacle Is the Way. Maybe you're going to be more intentional about your morning routine. Maybe you already were thinking about one specific thing that you could do to help you manage your energy differently, or maybe you're going to turn off the ringer on your phone. Like, I don't know what it is, but think about what you heard and not just think about it. Don't just say, well, that was good, but take some action, because until you ask this question and then take the action based on your answer, this was less valuable than it could have been. Let's just say it that way. So, Keith, thank you so much for being here. It was such a pleasure to have you.
It's great to meet you, Kevin, and great audience.
So everybody, you know that we're here every week, sometimes a special episode like this, but every week, another episode, at least one, with another leadership expert leader. And I hope that you will join us. And wherever you happen to be watching us from, you know what to do, right? You know that you can go rate us, or you can go refer us to others. I hope that you'll do that. And we'll see you again next week on another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Thanks, everyone.